In this lesson, we're going to cut out the windows for our level. Alright, so let's go ahead and get the windows for our level. We're just going to simply come into our Place panel and go to Geometry and drag in a new box. With this box, let's go ahead and set up our values here. We're going to do 200 on our X. Let's do 100 on the Y. Actually, let's do 10 on the Y. And then we'll leave it at 200 on the Z for right now. Actually, you know what? Let's go ahead and set this up to where it is 400 on the Y, because we're going to make some pretty tall windows for this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and drag this over, and I'm going to put this into position. And let's go to our top view. This might make it a little bit easier. Let's hit F on the keyboard so we can frame that and focus. And we'll put that right there, but you'll notice again we're not able to put that right on top of the wall. Let's go ahead and switch our grid down to 10, and actually let's do 5, and we'll place that there right on top of that, and we'll also make this subtractive while we're here. And then if we go inside to our perspective view, let's go ahead and just take a look at what we have. Let's go ahead and position that up a little bit higher, and we're going to place that right in here. That's going to make it pretty tall. That's actually going to cut out the entire bit there, which is okay. We're going to be placing some windows in here. Let me actually make this a little bit smaller, because the kind of window that I'm thinking about is actually going to have kind of an area right here across the bottom that's not necessarily going to be window, but it is going to be recessed a little bit. And so just to kind of help out with visual, let's take our Z value down. Let's do something like 300 on that. And then I'm going to drag this up, and I'll go to right about here or so. And what I'm looking at is I'm looking at the grid that I have on my mesh already, on that geometry. So as you can see, this is all BSP geometry, and every little square is actually 10 units. Okay, so as you can see, as we're moving this up, because we're setting to 5, if I move this up in the Z, notice how it goes halfway through those squares and then to the top of that. So that's a great way of knowing your measurements as well. So every large square is actually 10 units. Okay, or excuse me, 100 units. So if I switch this to 10, you'll notice that we can bring this down, and it goes every square. Okay, so let's go to right about here, maybe a little bit higher there. And it's going to give us a little bit of kind of a rim across that. Now I want that to be a little bit higher, so I'm actually going to come in and I'm just going to modify this geometry. So let's go to the geometry editing, make sure we're under edit, and I'm going to select these vertices. Now in the perspective view, that's kind of hard to do, so let's go to our side view and hit F on the keyboard so you can see that. And let's select around those vertices, and I'm just going to drag that up into where it's right on top of that line there. Let's go to our perspective here with those still selected, and you can see that that's pretty close. Let's go up one more, and we'll place that there. So I know that that is exactly 10 centimeters. Okay, or excuse me, 100 centimeters, because every little one is 10. Alright, so that looks pretty good. That gives us a nice little window there, and it's actually going to be a little bit wider than that. So we don't want to change the width of this, because we made some changes under the editing. And if you edit it, so if you move these vertices up and then you come over and change the values here, it's going to reset what you've done. Okay, so once you edit it, do not change anything in the details. So what we'll do is we'll come in and we'll go to our front view. So I'm going to go to my front view, hit Alt H, either way is fine. Select all of those vertices right there. Actually, you know what, let's do this. Let's take one side, we'll pull that over about halfway through that. So I'm going to go right here, and then we'll take this one, and we'll pull that over to right there. That's one too many. There we go. So halfway through there. Now I know that this looks like it's a wide window, but what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to fill this with 2 windows. So 2 different panes. Now there's going to be a static mesh that's there, and we're going to build all of that up. But I'm just kind of getting an idea of what that's going to look like. So pretty large windows here. Really good for looking out. So the room that we're kind of creating, like if you look up images of like asylums and things like that, a lot of times you'll find rooms that just have windows. And these windows, you could park like a wheelchair or something like that, and it was just kind of a practice to be able to see outside, get some vitamin D, if you will. So that's kind of what we're creating. Now I need to create the other windows here. So let's go to our top view. And this is going to be a little bit trickier because it's off at an angle here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually duplicate this. But let's turn off the geometry edit and let's go back to our place. With that brush still selected, let's hit Control W. That's going to duplicate that, and we're going to position it right over our wall here. And then we're going to hit E to go to our rotation tool. Let's rotate that, but you'll notice I didn't have snapping turned on. So let's hit Control Z. Let's turn that snapping back on, set to 10, and we're going to rotate that 45 degrees. So let's switch that to 5, and then we'll go there. There we go. Now it's kind of hard for this to sit here, so let's go ahead and grab our Move tool. And you'll notice it's not positioning to the wall. And it's really, really difficult to do that. So what I want to do is I'm just going to get it close. So I'm going to turn off my grid snapping. And I'm just going to move it to where it's right on top of that wall. So I'm going to position it right over that. And you should be able to just get pretty close. It should look like that line disappears. And there we go. Now, with BSP brushes, we cannot switch it over to local. Okay, it doesn't work that way. If I go to my perspective view, notice here that it's still in that world direction, even if I am in the local. Brushes don't work that way. So we just want to get it close. That looks pretty good. Happy with that. Let's go ahead and go to our top view, and let's get that other one. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to select the original, hit Control W to duplicate that, and let's position that over here. Now what I want to do is I want to turn my grid snapping back on before I do that, just to make it a little bit easier to get over there. Let's hit E, turn off that grid snapping, and we're going to rotate that 45 degrees. Then we'll grab our Move tool, and we're just going to position that over the wall. Kind of look at your distance between the two corners, get as close as possible. You don't have to be absolute on that, but you want to be pretty close. Okay. So I'm actually going to move this one just a little bit more to right about there, and then I'll come in and I'll zoom in on that a little bit more. Get that right over that box, over that wall. That looks pretty good. And then let's grab this one. So if you grab right here along the side, in between the wall, that'll make it easier to move and easier to select. So something like that. Now let's go to our perspective view, and you'll see that it cuts out both of those windows. You don't have to be absolutely exact, but you need to be fairly close. Alright, so there we have our 3 windows that we're going to be using for this. It looks pretty good that we're going to get a chance to kind of look out this. So we can kind of see what this is going to look like. So we'll be able to look out. We should be able to see everything off in that distance. And so we may want to think about what happens if we get to this angle right over here as the player, and we see off in that direction. What do we want to be able to see? Well, we can actually block that off with a wall or something like that to kind of make it appear as though it's part of another building. Now, we'll talk about how to do that later on, but we don't necessarily need to do that right now. So what we're going to do at this point is we're going to actually build in the interior walls that are going to belong in this, just to kind of fill up some space, and we'll talk about how to do that next.